Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today's guest is Blake Reichenbach, who is founder over at Howdy Curiosity. Blake, welcome to the show.
Hey, Adam. It's great to be here.
All right, Blake, so first thing first, Howdy Curiosity. How did you come up with this name? It's a great name, man. And how was it not taken? You got the URL. Like, it's a great name.
I got the URL. Well, I like to say that I've been an acolyte of curiosity for a long time. I love curiosity. And for a while, there was this, and there still is, this big, especially online push to say, follow your passion, do what you're passionate. Yeah. And I think that's garbage advice. I think follow your curiosity, especially for entrepreneurs, is much better advice because passion and excitement is fleeting, whereas curiosity is a good way to open doors to research and building habits and figuring out what works and what doesn't. So that's where curiosity comes from. The Howdy comes from the fact that I am a good old Appalachian Kentuckian. So yeah. I use howdy unironically constantly. So that's part of my brand as a person, and saying howdy to curiosity just fits.
So you were born into it. Okay, good. So I like it. It's authentic. That's what I like about it. That's awesome.
Exactly.
So check out the website, Nonfiction Bookstore and community for doers, thinkers, learners, and dabblers. Like, how did you come up with this idea originally?
Yeah, so for a long time, I wanted my own bookstore, right? My background is in literature. For a long time, I assumed I would pursue a career in academia focusing on literature because I love that world. And I love what books can do for people. But I think where a lot of my interest is in the innovative aspects of entrepreneurship and saying what else is possible, right? Again, it goes back to curiosity. And I don't think it's going to be a surprise to any of your listeners that bookstores aren't exactly the most profitable enterprise. Especially in the current economy. And the traditional retail model of a brick and mortar bookstore, it's very expensive to get started, very low profit margins, and it didn't quite fulfill that full interest. It didn't quite scratch the right itch of my curiosity for what I wanted to achieve. So I took a step back and asked myself, what was it about nonfiction books in particular that I found so compelling? And what I realized was that what interested me most was when people came together over ideas and dissected those ideas and found ways to integrate those concepts into their other creative and entrepreneurial pursuits. And so I wanted to take that concept of a bookstore and set up a bookstore online, use that as my top of funnel, and then build down from there and say, okay, how can I take books as a way to get people in the door, but then start building community around that and start building out something that is more focused and more tailored to particular interests and problems that people look to books to solve.
What was it like setting up an online bookstore? Like, did you have experience in kind of that space of tech or otherwise? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so surprisingly complex. I do have experience.
Not surprisingly, everything seems easier until you start doing it, and then you're like, not surprising. Not to anybody listening to this show, it's not surprising. Go ahead.
Fair. So I do have experience in tech. My day job, I like to say, is as a product manager at HubSpot. So I'm the product manager for our content AI platform. So if anybody who does listen to this podcast has used HubSpot or has seen our content remix tool, which is an AI content repurposing engine, that's mine. I built that. So very familiar with tech. I'm a fairly technical person. I've built websites from scratch before, but going through the challenges of building out an online bookstore, I think what made it particularly difficult compared to a lot of the other projects that I've spun up online in the past is that the underlying infrastructure for things like book distribution and fulfillment is pretty fragmented, and a lot of those platforms are pretty outdated. And so figuring out how to create an integrated and automated system for managing inventory, placing orders, fulfilling orders,
it's complex.
A nightmare. A nightmare.
It is. But you cracked the code, and I'm looking at the website, and it's beautiful. I mean, you did it. Like, and how's this going? Like, how do you find your authors? Like, give us a flavor of how people can participate. Like, how does this work?
Yeah. So as far as like how I find authors, especially for like content that I promote or for one of the new things that we're starting in August, which is book clubs, a lot of that right now is hand curation. So I'm looking at within my target audience, where am I seeing particular interest? Some of that is through like sales data on my website itself. What are people buying? What are people searching for? But a lot of it is also through social listening. So going onto websites like Twitter, or I guess now it's X, or YouTube, and looking at, okay, within things like the book talk hashtag or the just general book related topics, what are some of these books related to maybe the craft of writing or related to entrepreneurship that people are talking about a lot right now, or where there's a lot of debate over? And then I go through and just, I manually read the book and evaluate it, make those recommendations, and then put up all of the review collateral, promotional material. If it's something for a book club, I put together like the discussion guide and the promotional materials for that. I do all of that just by hand. Outside of the books that I feature, so the full like 28,000 title back catalog, which, spoiler, I have not read all 28,000 books that the store carries. I work with a really great data engineer who has managed to help bridge some of those horrible technical nightmares I was speaking about earlier, where I pay him a monthly retainer fee, and he does a lot of that SQL database querying for me to basically look and see with my distributors what titles are in stock, what is that stock amount, what's been taken out of stock, and then I keep everything synced into my Shopify site that way.
That's awesome. This is quite a complex ordeal here, but you're pulling it off, and I don't doubt it based on your background. So this is awesome. The community component, I find that pretty interesting. Like we started the conversation, you mentioned that this is kind of like the top of people just getting to know you and the funnel. Like, what's the idea behind the community component of this? And I see on the website, it says, the book club that you mentioned already that's coming up too. Talk to me about community.
Yeah. So the way that I like to encapsulate the community is like it's bringing people together, particularly creatives and entrepreneurs, so that writers can learn to brand themselves and think like entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs can learn to tell stories like writers. And it's very intentionally like those two cohorts, writers and entrepreneurs, because that's where, with my background as someone who comes from a writing background and a content marketing background and a product management background and an entrepreneurial background, it's where I can create the most value. But also, I think there's this perceived dichotomy where writers have just been told over and over again that if you're in the arts, you're a starving artist. You're going to labor away at your novel in shame. Maybe it'll get published, maybe not. You're just going to have to, work whatever menial job gets your bills paid, and you're going to hate it. And then I think on the other side of the spectrum, entrepreneurs often get this message about business strategy that puts creativity and storytelling as a secondary or tertiary skill to think about and to hone. And for both groups, that does a disservice, right? Writers can contribute so much value, either, within their own craft or to others, that they have a real opportunity to establish a platform, establish a brand, create multiple revenue streams that fuel their creative pursuits that are really meaningful to them. And that trope of the starving artist doesn't have to apply. At the same time, for entrepreneurs, being able to tell a really compelling story and being able to have written communications in particular, but really communications across the board that are clear and compelling and effective, that is a skill set that can open the door to so many networking opportunities, investment opportunities, and growth opportunities that those can't be second-class skills. Those need to be first-class skills for an entrepreneur. So my goal with the community then is to bring these cohorts together in mastermind groups to start breaking down the walls of this perceived dichotomy, this perceived opposition of entrepreneurship and written artistry, and again, facilitating writers owning their entrepreneurial brilliance, and entrepreneurs owning their storytelling and their craft there. So it's still very much in an alpha state. I'm still working to recruit that first cohort and iterate on it. I'm, like I mentioned before, a product manager by trade. So my approach to entrepreneurship is to start with a really small MVP, test things out, iterate, and then build from there. And that's where we're at with this community, right? We're in that first cycle of iteration and figuring out, okay, as these people are coming together, what's working, what's not working, how do we make this more valuable moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I feel like, especially for writers, for entrepreneurs, not having to make that choice anymore, like just in the age that we're living in, is amazing. Like to be able to, where everybody can create content and do different things, whether it's long form like a book, right? Or even if it's shorter form, and they can still have a contribution, right? And be heard and get their messages out there. So I'm loving that. I'm loving that. And I'm just a big fan of it, because nobody wants to be put in a box. And told that they have to be, oh, you're an entrepreneur, you can't be a writer, or you're a writer, you have to be broke. I mean, nowadays that's nonsense. Like they used to say about for graphics or this or that or any creator, it was like the concept of needing a patron. No, you can provide value, and if people are willing to pay you for said value, you'll be okay, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a great concept. And the cohort side of things, like talk to me a little bit further about that, about the MVP that you're putting together or have put together. Like, how do people participate? Like, how do people get involved?
Yeah, so it's application-based right now. So if folks did want to get involved, the best way to do that would be to head over to the website, so www.howdycuriosity.com. And then you can click through to the community landing page. I don't remember the exact URL off the top of my head right now, but essentially there are a couple of cohort options there, a writing cohort, an entrepreneurship cohort.
It's easy to find too. It's just right there. And you go to howdycuriosity.com, scroll down, it says community. It's pretty easy to find. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And from there, you can click on either of those cohort options, and there will be an application form that will pop up for folks to apply. And with the applications, I'm going through and reviewing all of those myself and doing follow-up with folks just to get a clear sense of what their interests are, what they hope to get out of the community cohort, and basically making sure that everyone who comes in at first is someone who is going to be able to, A, have time to participate, and B, be able to give feedback, right? Because my main goal right now is like, if you're going to participate with this cohort, I really want to make sure you get something good out of it, right? So you have time to participate, meaning we have time to work together, we can brainstorm, we can collaborate, the other peers in the cohort are able to collaborate together. I think that's really where folks are going to see the most value. And then, of course, the feedback, that's going to help me then evaluate the big picture of how this community is structured and figure out, before we let more people in, before we, open the floodgate, so to speak, or hopefully to speak, I hope it's a floodgate effect and not a trickle. But, before we open the floodgates, then what do we need to do to make sure that everyone who comes in after this alpha cohort is going to have just as good of an experience? So the alpha is a little bit selective, and I am going to be, like I said, reviewing the applications, doing some follow-up calls. But that's really just about making sure that if you come in and if you join this first cohort, that you're going to have like the best experience possible, and it's not going to be just like folks sitting on the digital sidelines waiting for someone to talk first.
Yeah, it's great. Love the concept. Love what you're doing. HowdyCuriosity.com is the website. We'll put the links to all of that in the show notes. Blake, I just want to say, hey, it's been great having you on the show today, learning more about this. I look forward to seeing this continue to grow, and who can ever forget a name like Howdy Curiosity, man? Great job.
Well, thank you.
Great. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time with Mission Matters, this is a daily show, meaning each and every day we're putting out new episodes, new ideas, new thought leaders, new content. If that sounds interesting or exciting to you, we hope it is, and we hope that you're inspired the same way we are in bringing you this content. Hit that subscribe button. Again, it's a daily show. Each and every day we have new episodes coming out. So make sure you hit that subscribe button or follow button so that you get the updates. And Blake, thanks again so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Adam.